Hello and welcome to the Invocation Podcast. Today we are talking about the Trivium as it relates to our modern day worlds and how it related to traditional education. Welcome to the Invocation Podcast. We bring critical thinking and intelligence to you in an incredibly unintelligent way. My name is Ignatius. And this is my hetero life partner, Johnny Truant.
Hey, how you doing?
And yeah, that's it as far as introductions go. You don't need to know anything really about us except we're masters of philosophy. I took one intro to philosophy class in college, and then we both took a intro to philosophy of religion class.
I could basically write my name, but, I mean, if you're asking me too much more than that, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. And my friend Johnny here, he took 2 intro to philosophy classes, so we're pretty much experts in this field.
Self-taught, let's say that.
No, experts. We are
the
the pundits of this entire endeavor.
Beautiful, it really is.
Alright, so we'll get into this. What is the Trivium? The Trivium was part of traditional education, and it was something that was taught through, I guess, what are now our formative years in education, what might be grade school and middle school, and even what is now high school. The subjects you would learn are grammar, logic or dialectics, and rhetoric. And the grammar is not just what we think of language grammar, but it seems like each subject has its own grammar. So science would have its own set of terms and terminology and language that you would use around science. The same with math. The same with any field of study that you would get into. It has its own language.
Pretty much anything that's studied, that's a legitimate field of study, has a root in one of these 3 schools. I mean, and in a lot of ways, a lot of just everything we do, and when I say everything we do, I mean things that when we're talking about a subject that we take for granted, the fact that this is called this thing because of this, or we know how this is because of this, and I can explain it to you this way because of rhetoric.
You're not doing a very good job of explaining anything to me. Our audience, that's a different story.
Oh no, you got to walk into these kind of things assuming your audience is way smarter than you, and then you take the criticism and you build on that.
No, I don't take any criticism. I was born perfect. I was born knowing what the Trivium is. I don't know about these amateurs, but what
I'm trying to say is a lot of people would already know. A lot of people know these already, and not maybe know what they were called, I mean, grammar and logic, it's when you're talking about grammar, it's just naming things.
Yeah.
It's the dichotomy between, okay, this is this and it's not this because of these things. Now you can get really deep into it, and the nature of being, from Kant, and the nature of naming things from Heidegger and stuff, But I mean, most of these are rooted before that. They're rooted in Greek writings.
Yeah, the Greco-Roman times when philosophies were a bit larger than life, I guess, or at least that's the way we put it.
Wrestled naked.
Yeah.
Oh, what? That's the part I concentrate on. I'm just
a
fan of the
naked wrestling. That's where I'm. That's why we joined in wrestling in high school, wasn't it? Or was it because of professional wrestling? We thought that's what was good.
Well, I thought that was why I joined, and I showed up the first day, in a toga with nothing under it,
Expecting to strip down from that.
I didn't have to go to that school anymore. They let me go to a different school after that. It was kind of nice.
All right, so we've covered grammar, and not just the grammar of our language, but grammar of each individual subject. So science has its own grammar, math has its own grammar, astronomy might have its own grammar, stuff like that. Um, After a student has a solid grasp of grammar, we would move on to logic or dialectics. So this is removing contradicting evidence, analyzing things. We can create facts that can be trusted. So I can state something that sounds like a fact, but without this magical logic to back it up, what good is that statement?
I would argue that logic would probably predate grammar and rhetoric, just because an early hominid, would not have a word or a symbol that he would associate with a thing, but he might be able to use logic on why some things are this way and some things are this way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All I'm saying is logic should come first.
Well, this is just a discussion on how it was presented in traditional education. Traditionally, grammar was taught first. When you're young, you can learn grammar. You can learn rhymes that might relate to science or now technology or something like that. You can learn the language behind a subject, but you might not understand the reasoning behind it.
I see what you're saying. A lot of rhymes back in the Marines. We'd call them ditties. I don't know why we call them that, but we'd say, hey, this. We'd have to memorize the parts of an M16 or the general orders or something like that, and we'd make up
You came
either
up
an
with nursery rhymes?
or a short little song, that we'd say in our head, out loud at first, then in our heads, just to remember the thing. So I understand what you're saying when you're in kindergarten or whatever, first grade of primary school for you over the pond guys. You're taught a rhyme or an acronym.
I got a question. When you were in a combat situation, were you guys reciting that rhyme out loud? If you all did it in unison, it'd be pretty terrifying to the opposing force.
I mean, you'd think so, but turns out when the enemy knows exactly where you are because they can hear you, they'll shoot you. It's weird.
I thought that was the point of marching and having uniforms and stuff like that.
Being shot at? Yeah, I think so.
Everyone's a unified force. Kind of adds to the mysticism and terror that someone else would face.
I see a place for maybe enemy morale demoralization, but
through kindergarten rhymes about your M16.
well, not that. Someone sent me a link. It was an actual article. It was some march. I want to say it was World War I. It was called a slow march, and it was at the behest of some English general, and he thought for some reason that a slow march toward the enemy, would be more demoralizing, and the casualties were just immense.
Oh, I think I remember reading about that. Wasn't there like a World War I?
Yeah, I think it was
British general or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just slow march towards these machine guns.
The slow march. Look it up. I'm in a cave, so I don't have any computer or internet in front of me. But
yeah, we're communicating. There's a smoke signal translator outside of this guy's cave, so it's you're not hearing his actual voice in this.
You're hearing
incredible nuance. There's smoke signals.
It's perfect. It's an interpretation on his end. Maybe I don't sound like this at all. No, but
technology has come so far since Stephen Hawking.
Oh yeah. Well, the story of Samuel Morse, is like, hey, he got a letter. His wife was sick, and then 2 days later he got a letter saying she was dead, and they were sent like 2 months ago, kind of thing, and he developed a way to communicate faster.
The internet.
Yeah, he invented the internet. A series of tubes across the new world.
All right, so now that a student would have a firm grasp of the grammar of a subject, or even the grammar of their own language, they move on to logic or dialectics, which is breaking an argument down and being able to present facts. Then we move on to rhetoric. So that is using grammar and logic to persuade someone. This might also be seen as wisdom, or what we know as wisdom.
It's weird that we had this. If I can go back to logic for just a minute, It's weird that we have this. We have the trivium before we have the scientific process, which is kind of weird.
Oh.
In my thinking, anyway, like logic seems like okay. It works on surface level, You see that that a bag of grain set out in the open, is going to have, is going to be eaten by flies or eaten by wildlife or whatever, and it's not going to be there the next day, or it's going to have maggots in it, kind of thing. You don't know why, you know that follows that for basic things. But logic, as far as like building on something, like you don't start with the premise and say, hey, because I said so. You say, hey, this I postulate is true because of this, and this we know is true, and he either puts another proof up before that to support his original assumption, or he refers to something that's common knowledge kind of thing. And that seems like that is pretty advanced to know, because remember, is she a witch? Well, does she float?
Yeah.
Then she's a duck. I forget how that goes. But I know that the scientific process is a relatively recent addition to science, the scientific method rather. It just seems like. Do you know when logic was adopted as part of the Trivium? Do you know what that consisted of? You want to go into that a little more?
Oh, well, it seemed like grammar, logic, and rhetoric, as what is called the Trivium, was adopted in it seemed like the Middle Ages, and that's when the term the Trivium came about. It's from what I've read. Now, grammar, logic, and rhetoric were taught as part of education way back in like ancient Roman times, but it wasn't called the Trivium back then. That's just the way things were taught.
That was a recent convention, a more recent convention.
Yeah.
For naming them. Okay.
But for a long time, those were just kind of the basic cornerstones of more advanced education. So you would move on to more advanced stuff like music theory and different types of math and stuff like that. But the grammar, the logic, and the rhetoric were the cornerstones of learning anything else, basically.
I can see that. I get what you're saying now. I kind of stopped you. Go on to rhetoric. What were you going to say about rhetoric?
That was it. Just using grammar and logic to persuade someone. So you have this. You're able to describe things. You're able to describe the words of whatever subject that you want to talk about. You have the logic, so you're able to present an argument, and now you can use this rhetoric to persuade someone. So you can have an argument, you can listen to someone's counter argument, and you could produce a counter to their argument or something like that. So you're trying to persuade someone, or you're trying to present wisdom to someone else.
I get that. Okay. Cool. But yeah, that's the Trivium. Did you want to go into how it applies to things we use today or other schools? I can't think of anything else, like I was saying earlier, that we study that doesn't touch on one or more of those.
Yeah,
obviously, basic sense. You think grammar, you think, okay, this is taxonomy. What is this? What does this come from? Kind of thing. How we name things.
Yeah. It seems like today's education, it almost seems like we're learning things for the sake of learning. We're in school for the sake of being in school because that's how it's been for a while now.
For higher education. And you obviously learn a skill, but there's a little bit of academia in being able to learn a skill. So to be able to read.
I don't even know how much of a skill we're learning in grade school, middle school, high school. We're memorizing facts at this point, and there are a lot of facts that would be the basis of larger bodies of knowledge, but it's cramming facts down someone's throat isn't my idea of a skill.
Oh yeah, no. I think if instead of learning everything, if we stopped at multiplication tables is the highest learning thing, the most advanced subject that I learned in elementary school that I still use today. So say we stopped at multiplication table, stopped at third grade. So 4th, 5th, and 6th through 12th was all just, hey, here's your intro to programming. Go. And just from there, you think we'd be better off?
Oh, maybe. There are actually other countries. I think France practices something like that. When you get to middle school, you decide, all right, am I going to go into high school, or am I going to start learning a trade at this point? I could be completely wrong about that. That might be an old-fashioned way of thinking or something like that. But
that's awesome. That'd be. I don't know. I don't know anything about that, but that'd be a great alternative. I mean, especially you get into these days, it's like, okay, and I say these days, I mean the modern era. You can't. I mean, you have to have a pretty good excuse for not going to school. You either are homeschooled, or you go to, or you drop out, and you're awarded the state or whatever kind of thing, and.
Or you become a billionaire. Like, honestly, it could go either direction.
Yeah, I mean, on the average, we're gonna talk about average. On the average, you besides getting a piece of paper that says, "Hey, this is a GED," or "Hey, this is a high school diploma," I mean, what really are you learning?
Well, traditionally it was learning how to learn. You had you would learn things in high school. You would learn history, you would learn math, you would learn language, which are the basis for a lot of other things that we learn. But I think the biggest thing that most of us should be getting from 13 years of required school now would be learning how to learn, learning how to know a subject. But it seems like what we learn lately is rote memorization.
Yeah, I can dig that. Well, it'd be one thing if what was on the curriculum, everybody after these 13 years ended up just knowing all of it. But that's not the case. Is it how we're being taught, or is it that these things aren't actually important kind of thing? I mean,
I think to a degree it's how we're being taught. I think if you have an enthusiastic, knowledgeable teacher who knows how to teach to someone's strengths, you can get someone kind of enthusiastic about it, just about any subject, just by being enthusiastic yourself. You can get a teacher who is great at teaching math and will be great for these students, but it seems like a lot of teachers are just opening up a textbook, reading out of that, or giving a lecture on some subject that none of the students care about. And it always goes at one pace. We don't let the kids who are behind catch up, and we don't present anything more challenging for the kids who are ahead.
Okay, would you be in favor of something that's not based on age? Like, hey, you are at you start at 6 years old at this school, and then after the first year, it's free form. You test out of this, and then you go to something else. You study what you're interested in, and it's not based on, you could have an 8-year-old, learning with a 13-year-old, if they're both getting into this thing at the same time, or the 8-year-old has just, been in it for a while, and can keep up kind of thing.
Well, I don't really have an answer to that question, but maybe that's something we can cover in another podcast episode.
That'd be good. I was kind of getting off track there.
No, that's fine. Let me write that down real quick. So the, back to what we had asked before, how does this relate to today's education? So grammar we do learn grammar in grade school, and we use it so much that it kind of burns into our head. We get graded on it, we get tested on it, we mark up papers, we should know how to form a sentence, how to separate out a sentence, what each of these punctuation marks means and what they do, and how to use them and stuff like that. We learn grammar as a subject, but we don't. It almost feels like we don't take this grammar and learn how it relates to other subjects. We learn grammar for the sake of learning grammar, but why is this learning important for me? How does math fit?
Okay,
I
thought you meant.
how does grammar fit? The grammar of math fit into the grammar of music. How does the grammar of history learn into the grammar of learning a language, for example? So just
Okay.
the grammars of each subject.
It's the nomenclature. I thought you meant more etymology. Like, hey,
Well,
we know that this word comes from this because it comes from this because it comes from this. Like I looked up a word earlier, excruciating. And crucis is the root of that. And it has to do with crucifixion. So long and drawn out and painful, excruciating.
well, the nomenclature behind words, the history behind words, can be really interesting. Like what we have today as a greeting, hello and hi, comes from an old saying, which is heaven high, hell low. And I thought that was really really interesting to me. Not everyone cares about the history behind words or where we get words from or where they originated from or their roots or anything like that. That's fine. We don't really need that, but how
Do you think that's a
would
recent phenomenon? People not caring about how language is formed, and how. Because you're in these subjects, we're talking about learning, we're talking about academia and education. There's always going to be people who are not are nonplussed by it. They're like, okay, I'm going to learn this stuff because I need to get this diploma, or hey, I know this because it was on the test, but I'm not going to. I don't know what percentage of people after mandatory compulsory education never open up another book.
I
I
don't
mean,
I don't know hysterically how many people were not interested in this, but it does seem like there was a lot of force behind it. You're going to school because that's what's expected of you, and that
yeah,
seems to go back a long way.
yeah, I can see that. Well, so not the etymology, but the nomenclature. You mentioned the grammar of music versus the grammar of math. You want to go into that for a minute?
Well, we learn we learn the basics of math. We learn how what these numbers represent, how they interact with each other, how you might get from one number to another, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A big part of music is math. You have timing, you have how long a note is held, you have how fast music goes, and you have there's a lot of fractions involved with music involving the tempo, stuff like that. A big part of music is math, and people don't seem to realize that or how they fit together. And it might not be as complicated as how does calculus fit into how I play my flute, but
Yeah. No.
it doesn't seem like we're ever taught that a big part of music is math.
Yeah. It's you have what's considered a note and a fraction of a note, and you have. I think we were talking earlier about how a tone is generated electronically. It's just literally it's just a frequency.
Yeah,
There's just waves, and that's ties directly into math.
yeah.
So I can see that.
Well, you'd ask specifically how it comes from a printer or a floppy disk or something like that, and those are the motors just working at different speeds through pulse width modulation. But that same thing is used for the internal PC speakers as well. So the little speaker that we don't have them on computers as much anymore, but the computers in like the 90s and 80s, they had a speaker that would talk to you if we couldn't display any videos. When you start your computer, it would have that one beep, and that was it. And that one single beep was basically the everything's okay beep. The computer passed all its tests on the memory and the CPU, and it detected all the required hardware, and was going to go continue from there.
Just to correct you really quick, I actually didn't ask about how that can make music. I asked how right printy box make funny good sound.
Well, that's because you pumped too much voltage through it, and now it's broken. I tried to tell you this before you took it to the repair shop, but it's a lost cause, man.
It's a printer repair shop. I've been binging Red Letter Media. Don't need to bleep that. It's Just a shout out, if we get your mentions, it's all right, right?
There's a printer repair shop near me that actually does get a lot of business.
Is it Lightning Fast Printer Repair?
No, sadly. Although I should probably convince them to change their name to that, huh?
I think you definitely should.
Look, I'm not saying this is going to be good for business.
Let's do logic. Let's do logic. Okay. So logic. Mechanics. This is just if this then this. This seems more out of the three. This seems more science oriented. If that makes any sense.
Hey, hold on for just a moment.
Holding on.
All right.
Would you like some soothing white noise?
Yes. I had to close something in the background because I was going to cause some noise that would appear on this podcast, but that's okay.
I'll take care of it in post.
Mistakes were learned. All right. So we were getting to how logic relates to today's education. Yep. A big part of it is in the scientific method that we teach, which you had touched on briefly before. We do get a basis for it in math as well. Math is a very, very logical subject up until you reach some some higher theoretical math. Then it kind of seems to fall apart from there. But it's still very much based in logic. But logic as a subject, I don't remember actually learning this in grade school or middle school or high school. I think we briefly touched on it and what it is. And I think we went through a couple examples, but we never said what is logic? How does it apply to things? How can we use it?
I couldn't see the public school system skipping over this for any reason other than to stifle higher learning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, logic is everything, I mean, when I think of logic, I think of what brought us out of the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
Like everything in science, that's proven. It's hey, this is why. You're gonna use a lot of pronouns, though, but this is why this works. This is why, flight is possible. This is why, hey, the Earth revolves around the sun.
We can find out why something happened and look at the underlying factors of it.
Yeah, you get into things like, okay, historically, okay, why did this happen? Well, last time this also happened, so it would follow that maybe these two are connected,
Yeah.
Hey, last time lightning struck, I was also out under the biggest tree in the field, and lightning struck me again, maybe this tree is cursed. Oh no, well maybe this tree's struck because it's the tallest kind of thing.
Logically, this tree is cursed.
Logically, you shouldn't go out in a dang rainstorm.
Yeah. I mean, humans aren't the smartest bunch. We know that.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
So yeah, we get the basis for logic through math. We get it through the scientific method. We learn to extract data. We learn to come up with a conclusion with that data. But it almost feels like we don't learn that underlying what is logic, how is it used in almost anything else.
Yeah,
how we can apply it to day-to-day life.
I think is a logic gate, in computing kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, if this happens, then this happens, kind of. No, I feel you. Do you want to go more into logic? Because logic literally is part of every one of our fields. Anything that is written down. Written down seems like I'm talking about grammar. Anything that's written down, anything that's recorded, rather, that's important. We're using logic in that. Hey, well, the scientific method comes to mind, but just chemistry. Just hey, this works with this. This will poison you if you eat it. This will get you drunk. Logically, if I do this, this won't happen. Maybe we're not taught it per se because it's really elementary.
Maybe. But it seems like we're approaching the almost a top-down method. We learned all these more advanced things. We learned math. We learned the scientific, a lot of science, and we learned we learned some human behavior and stuff like that. And now we're interested in this subject. How does logic apply to all of this? Or what can I get from this? All of this logically? Why do I need to learn logic?
Well, I mean, all right. Well, you can study something in contrast. Well, what does something look like when we're not using logic? Why do we use logic instead of the absence of logic, or why do we use logic instead of superstition? I mean,
suppose to get to the bottom of something, we want to learn how something works or why something is the way it is.
yeah. I mean, you mean versus superstition?
Yeah, superstitious or having faith in something that is the way it is
Yeah.
because I believe it, because I have faith that it is the way
Because the
it
king
is.
said so. Kind of. Yeah. I see that. Do you think anybody? I mean, what am I trying to ask here? Before, say, I don't know when we could actually think about these things without getting ire from the powers that be. I mean, the Renaissance, comes to mind. So does the Greek age of enlightenment. They could, and not saying there weren't people there saying, "Hey, don't talk about this." This is not. This goes against the church. You're defying the gods by talking about this kind of thing or doing this. But it seems like if did someone sit down and say, "Hey, by the way, we should question everything," or "Hey, we should question some things." I know a lot of the really famous scientific minds, like Isaac Newton, and I'm pretty sure Da Vinci and not Einstein, but a lot of the scientific minds were they were devoutly religious people.
Yeah, they were religious, but I guess they saw something more in the world and maybe tested their faith a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. So we seem to kind of be running circles on logic. You want to go over to rhetoric?
Yeah. So rhetoric, I really don't think we learned this at all in high school, except for persuasive essays. You remember
Yeah.
doing those?
I remember a debate class.
I didn't have a debate class. We never there was a club in high
Debate
school.
club. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it, yeah.
But that was optional. We didn't have to go to that. We didn't have to sit down at any of their debates. We didn't have to attend debate club. There was no how to convince people of stuff classes or anything like that.
In a lot of ways, like grammar and logic, rhetoric is, hey, do I know the basics of this? Can I convince the person on the phone that what I'm saying is true? Hey, there really is a fire here. Oh yeah, well, hey, my speech is 10, and could convince the dispatcher that there's a fire. You need a 15. Sorry, your house burns down.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It seemed like we never learned how to persuade something of someone. We learned the grammar of subjects. We learned the logic of subjects, even if we didn't know we were learning the logic of subjects. So we were taught to a degree how to think, or maybe that's how I learned it. Like, oh, this is really cool and kind of relates to this somehow, and whatever. But there wasn't a lot of convincing people. At least that's not what I saw in my traditional school upbringing.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, I can be cynical to the school system all day if you give me the opportunity to. But
well, good. We need to pad out the time on this podcast.
we're padding it out now.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, I always thought for a persuasive essay, it's like, okay, extra credit for persuading the person on this, or writing the essay from a position you don't agree from, or something like that kind of thing. And that I could never figure out why that didn't really sit right with me. No, I mean, if there's no there's some passion to rhetoric, because I mean you can get a problem today that we have in the world, that makes sense, and the answer is right in front of you, and you can explain to them all day, cows come home till you're blue in the face, anti-vaxxers are a thing, I mean, there are some people who still believe, oh no, my kid doesn't need to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Hey, listeners, if that's your thing, give your children away to CPS. No, if that's your thing, it's just an example. An anti-vaxxer, you can tell them all day, hey, this is the data, and this is the historic precedence of vaccinating your kids, and this is what it's like in parts of the world where people don't vaccinate their kids because they can't afford vaccines, and they still won't believe it. You're giving them everything they need, and it's still not enough, So for me, there's a certain art to rhetoric, and I don't mean just like speaking in flowery language, I don't mean speaking in a clear voice, and making eye contact, the things that they teach you in debate class. I mean, there is a.
You mentioned passion earlier. You need to have a certain passion for it.
There's a passion for truth.
Mm-hmm.
You want to convince someone. You want to convince someone because you can make money on it. If it's a job kind of thing, you want to convince someone because you're trying to help them. If they're someone that's a loved one, that's making a bad decision, you're trying to convince them of something like that, or you're in politics and you're trying to convince people to vote for you, that your ideas are right and correct, and that you'll follow through on them. There's always, in all those things, there's always, maybe not so much in salesmanship, but there's always truth. I think if you were even in salesmanship, if you're the salesman that's saying, hey, the prices, you're going to pay maybe 5% more, but here's what you're getting, is that going to sell the most? I don't know, but for me, there's a passion in rhetoric that has to be there, and it has to be arguing from a position you agree with because you think you're telling the truth.
You think rhetoric is entirely truth-based? Or at least what you might...
It isn't, but it's more realistic when it is.
Uh-huh.
You get the used car salesman, I mean, we've been sold a lemon before. I mean, we've literally bought a car that was just about to go on the recall list, and the people who sold it to us, the dealership knew that the car had problems and it would probably be back, and they tried to talk us out of the warranty. We ended up going back there twice for that warranty, and we're glad we bought because there was a problem kind of thing. Well, if we would have been a little more, a little more canny, a little more savvy, we would have realized, okay, this isn't a good deal, we're not being convinced well enough. And I think that, like I said, with rhetoric, there should be a passion because it's something you believe in, and you believe in something because it's the truth. I don't think you could willfully, without doing some kind of mental gymnastics, believe in something that's not the truth, that is not the truth.
Oh yeah, there's mental gymnastics. There's a confirmation bias. Yeah, confirmation bias. Yeah. So if you already believe something, then you're gonna find stuff that will support your facts and just disbelieve everything else.
Oh yes, I know that's natural for human beings.
Yeah, a big part of that is we don't want to believe we're wrong. We have ego, which is a big part of I think anyone's personality, and you have to really do some introspection to admit you could ever be wrong, and to realize that maybe being wrong isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah, well, to contrast ego with narcissism, you can have narcissism is aggrandizing yourself, to be viewed by others, and ego is just being self-concerned or self-centered, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
ego is not historically seen as bad, where narcissism is. There's a difference there, that I'm probably miscommunicating, but. We kind of got off there. Sorry about that.
We're still talking about rhetoric and arguing.
Confirmation bias. Compartmentalization. So you're like, okay, you can have two views that strongly contradict each other. Because you've done an amazing thing with the human brain where you've compartmentalized those two things as completely separate when they're actually related on a fundamental basis. And said, okay, this can be true, but at the same time, this thing is also not true, like this is terrible, this is bad, but it's okay when I do it is a big one.
Oh yeah, I've heard the saying, you judge other people based on their actions, but yourself based on your intentions.
That's so funny how that is. That's really funny. But no, it's true. It's true. I think I've heard that as well. That's something to really meditate on.
Yeah. You mentioned part of rhetoric is having a passion for a subject and believing in certain truth or something like
Yes.
that. I don't know if you've ever watched. There's a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode called "Measure of a Man."
I've watched bits and pieces, primarily from other podcasts saying, hey, Mike Salaska is like, hey, this is like this movie kind of reminded me of this episode of Next Gen. I'm like, okay, look it up. What is he talking about?
Well, you should sit down and watch that at some point. That's often argued to be one of the best episodes of The Next Generation. And basically, in this episode, it's there's someone in Starfleet who wants to take Data apart, learn how he works, and basically recreate him. And so the entire argument behind the episode is Data Starfleet property, or is he a citizen of the Federation? Does he have the right to say no, I don't want to be taken apart, or the right to actually retire from Starfleet, so he can not have to deal with that? Because a big part of being taken apart was, he might not be put back together properly or correctly, so he might die at that point.
Yeah, no, that's the basis for a lot of science fiction. Whether you're talking about Blade Runner and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep,
Yeah.
Based on kind of thing. But what is it to be human? That's a lot of that's a basis for a lot of science fiction. But that kind of hits the nail on the head.
But what you were arguing with rhetoric was you have to have a passion for the subject. You have to believe in it and a truth one way or another. Well, part of the episode was Captain Picard was representing Data in this trial. William Riker was representing the other side. Riker was the one who was trying to convince the court that Data is just Starfleet property rather, because the only other option would have been if he didn't argue in that case, due to some rule that Starfleet had apparently, was the judge was going to say, okay, I'm going to issue summary execution or whatever. I forget the exact terms you use, but
so if Riker didn't argue against Data, then Data would automatically be destroyed.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did Riker do? Did he end up doing it badly on purpose?
No. He presented a really well executed argument. Actually, he proved a few things in court. He said, "Data, I'm going to take your hand off," and he found a way to do that, and it was just like a little, I don't know, little switch or something like that, and he was able to remove basically his entire forearm. And he's like, we can't do this with people, and every part of Data is able to come off like this. And then I'm going to do something that I can't do to any other person, and he just turned Data off. He found Data's off switch, and he just turned him off. And he's like, I can do this to machine, but I can't do this to people without killing them.
Well, if I can counter-signal your premise for a minute, you get into the fallacy. Well, there's a lot of like morally gray areas with what the Federation do in Star Trek in general. But a lot of the episodes are based around there's it's very procedural. Like, hey, we have this, we're gonna encounter this. There's a moral conflict here. And then we resolve it. We all learn something. Kind of thing. Well, not all the conclusions they come to are I make a lot of sense in a historical context, or like even in a moral context, sometimes, But what I was getting back to your example, we sometimes fall into this pitfall where, hey, if you tell an actor, hey, use body language to look like you're lying, well, they're just going to totally exaggerate that, because they're acting.
Yeah.
Like Riker's like, okay, I need you to deliver this speech impassionately. Well, the actor is, whether or not he has passion for that or not. I'm saying it's kind of, you're kind of in a catch-22 kind of like wondering whether, okay, is he serious and just a really good actor at pretending not to be for Data's case, because that's one of those things like, hey, like,
well,
okay, Yeah, like arguing, like doing a thing because I know in that situation, and I'm totally cool, by the way. You can take a step back with derailing for a second, because I like talking about science fiction and moral quandaries and stuff. This is cool. This is good stuff.
Well, I've heard the person who controls the spies controls the universe or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
might be the wrong universe, but
they're actually making a higher budget Frank Herbert Dune. It's going to be out next year, I believe.
Oh, it's going to be awful. I've never seen the original, but it's going to be awful compared to the original. I already know.
All right. Let's get back to Star Trek. Get fired. I can't believe I'm saying that. Let's get back to Star Trek so we can get back with where the heck we were just talking about. All right,
some other nerd shit.
some other nerd shit. Leave all that out. All right. So you got Riker, and he's said, okay, you're ordered to present a case against killing this guy, or we're going to kill him.
Yeah.
Well, and then it seems like, okay, I can't present something that. It seems like an honest person. I'm not saying Riker's not honest. I'm saying that the person playing him is an actor. Mm-hmm. It seems like an honest person would have. There's a little bit of fourth wall breaking there, kind of on our part, but it seems like an honest person would have trouble legitimately giving a case against something that he believes in. Like a sociopath or something.
Yeah, that was one of the arguments he presented before he was kind of forced into this. Was Data's my friend. I don't want to argue for this. It's been a while since I've seen this episode. But I believe the judge that was there said if you don't argue this case, I will rule in favor of the person who wants to take Data apart. And so Riker agreed to it, and the judge basically said, if I ever feel like you're not arguing to the fullest of your abilities, then I'm just going to rule in the other guy's favor, or something to that effect.
Was the judge human?
Yes, the judge was human.
Okay. I mean, you may not think that makes a difference or not, I mean, in a context, it does.
But yeah, I think Riker just went into that like I don't want to do this, but I have to do this, and just hope that Picard does better. This is our only chance to get it done, basically.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I can't. It seemed like to me, on the back of my mind, it seemed like, okay, I'm gonna half-ass this. Or if I think of a really good, point to make in favor of disassembling Data,
Mm-hmm.
I might just kind of like downplay that or forget it,
Well, that was it. It was the judge said like you have to argue this to the fullest of your abilities. You have to present that even if you don't believe it, you have to argue for that case, and that's something that we did in debate club, right? We have two sides for a debate, and we might not believe in one of these sides, but we're going to have to present arguments for that side anyways.
Yeah, whenever I did that against something I believed in, it was just tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I could have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's like, we should let this multiple murderer go because all life is sacred. It's...
Because if you were in jail, he'd want to let you go too.
Maybe that's a character flaw on my part. It'd be hard for me, but I don't think it'd be hard. I don't think it'd be easy for a lot of people, if I can add that.
We are going to hit the pause button for just a moment, take a quick break, and please note that in this episode I had planned to do some musical interlude, but I am very lazy, so, following conversations should be pretty entertaining. However, there was no music. Thanks for that, and we'll get back to our episode. Thanks. Alright, we are back from our musical number. The one I recorded poorly and loudly.
Chopsticks.
Played by chopsticks with chopsticks.
On an analog grand piano, like an actual piano. You just hold a mic. Your recording mic close to it.
I'm gonna hold it close to my mouth so you can hear me breathing too.
No, you open up the lid. You open up. You pop the hood on the piano, right? And you just
put it in so it's just like awful and loud and just
throw the wireless mic in there, close it up, and then just like you're playing
chopsticks
in the Hall of Mountain King.
Oh yeah, that's you. At the same time.
Yeah, you're playing both at the same time.
Yeah, that would be a great duet, dude.
That's That's terrible.
We have an out of tune piano out in the garage. You know, the thing hasn't been serviced in like 50 years. So,
Just keep playing it as it is.
yeah, that's what I try to, but like some of the keys don't even connect.
Work? Oh, that's fine.
It actually had ivory keys, and it was a piano that was my grandpa's at his house, and my uncle, who is only 11 months away from me, in terms of age, he.
I thought you meant in terms of geography.
Yeah, it's an 11-month flight.
So just like just the Appalachian Trail away.
Yeah. Anyways, he's 11 months older than me, and growing up, he figured out that you could pop the tops off of these ivory keys to expose the underlying wood. And he showed me and my sister how to do it, and now I think like 2 of the keys on this entire piano have the ivory still left on them. So it's out of tune. The keys look ugly as hell. My dad is thinking about, he's like, the wood is the only thing worth anything on this thing anymore, so he's thinking about gutting the piano and turning it into a computer desk.
Oh.
It's one of those stand-up pianos like you would see in an old West saloon in the Wild West movies.
Those are peonies.
Peonies?
Play peony.
You play the peony?
You get a Pekingese, and they play peony, and the rest of the dogs are playing poker.
Anyway, we were discussing rhetoric and how it relates to nerd shit that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And the point I was trying to make before this break was that you would argue that rhetoric, it feels like you should believe the truth behind it and have passion for the subject, but Riker didn't want to believe the truth, I guess. It was still truthful that you could turn data off, you could remove parts of data, and you would still be fine when you reattach those parts at any time. But he still had to argue something that he wasn't exactly passionate about.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that. There's the meta, which is the farthest back I went with the meta was like, hey, these are actors. Yeah. Before that's like, okay, he's arguing, can you argue something in good faith that you don't believe in? Yeah. And then what he's actually arguing, the first layer of that is, hey, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be maybe not human, but they kind of twist that around too. It's like, okay, a sentient organism. Yeah. And I gotta kind of push back on that a little bit, because we have laws against harming things that are, like you're not supposed to. We don't eat elephants, because they're smart, but another animal that might be the same size that's dumb we might eat, you know, kind of thing. But at the same time, we don't let elephants vote.
I thought we didn't eat elephants because they taste awful.
Well, I don't mind the taste of elephants, but some people, it doesn't agree with them.
Is it an acquired taste? Maybe it's smart things that are acquired taste, There's people don't resort to cannibalism very often because humans don't taste that good, I guess.
There's some stigma with that, and I suppose, but I mean, people have said they taste, similar to pork. But in general, most things that I've eaten that don't subsist on plants don't taste very good. Like fish excluded, because fish, they either have their own taste, or they taste like fish, or they have their own taste and they still kind of taste like fish.
Fish eat their own poop, dude. That's gross that you would eat those.
Well, the human being is said to eat 4 spiders a year. I don't know where that comes from. People always ask if that's true or not, but no one ever asks who's feeding us those spiders.
Do you think that averages out? Do you think if you lived in a spider-free environment in your room for your entire life, just before you die, like 1,000 spiders just crawl into your mouth all at once?
No, but I do think it averages out on a
global
scale, on a global scale, So there's a few people who just fall asleep, with their mouths open, with the knowledge that their roommates are just going to feed them spiders all night. Oh, and they do that for like 6 months out of the year.
So you don't think it's just one guy sitting in a cave eating spiders all day, and he's actually bringing the entire global average up?
No, that's exactly what it is, but it's supposed to be in your sleep, and for that, it's kind of hard if you live alone.
Does sleepwalking count? Go and eat something in your sleep. You're
Yeah, no,
technically still sleeping, right?
you're still asleep. I mean, we say, hey, this is REM. Your brain does certain things. You're still asleep.
Random eating of, I don't know. What's an M word for spider?
Uh, um,
Anyway.
I'm trying to think of what other languages I know with the word spider in, and I'm like, okay, one. Just Aranya.
That doesn't start with the M at all.
I know, it's
Alright.
not even an M in that. Anyway, okay, so we're talking about rhetoric. It's used for not just clever mental exercises, and convincing people, but it's used all the time, I guess. I can't think of these are all used all the time. I'm trying to think of examples, either in fiction or in history, or in isolated societies where we don't use these things, even just at the very base, rudimentary level.
Mm-hmm.
Like rhetoric. Like if you're not using rhetoric, you're not thinking, or you're not having independent thought.
Yeah.
If you're not using logic, you're also not having independent thought. You're just doing something that's rote. That's something that you were told to do. No, you're still kind of using logic then. You're like, okay, I bring these rocks from here to here all day, and I know logically if I don't do that, because it's happened in the past a couple times, if I don't do that, I get beaten, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're still kind of using logic. Grammar, I guess, the animal kingdom, they don't have names for things. Most of them don't anyway. I mean, you can associate sounds you make to a lot of higher animals, and they'll associate that thing. Pavlov's dog comes to mind, I guess, but just knowing a dog knowing what walk means. He doesn't know why it's called walk or where it comes from, but he knows he was probably associating a feeling he has of being outside of a certain door.
Yeah.
With that word. So I guess that's grammar in some sense.
Well, you might also think grammar, even if you don't know a word for something, you can still know what it represents. There is a language behind just seeing something. We associate these words, letters, stuff like that. These are just random scribbles that someone thought up thousands of years ago, that don't really mean anything except what value we've assigned to them, what meaning we've assigned to them. There's a grammar behind those letters. There's a grammar behind those words. Shit's all made up because our tongue flaps are moving. We can force someone else to think what we're thinking.
Well, using the word meaning is kind of self-referential too, because, what is... You can't... I try to avoid things, referring to things that are so obvious, and things that are really obvious to me are because I can't think of a situation where they couldn't exist. A word or a letter... letters used to represent a word, or symbols used to represent a word or a concept. But the concept is not less real. You get into what's a social construct?
Yeah.
Language is a social construct. It doesn't mean it's invalid.
Well,
because
kind of where I was going for that was you said these animals don't know words. They don't know the grammar, what something is called or whatever. But if a leopard sees its prey, it knows that is food. It might not have a word for it, but there's a certain language. It knows that's something that's going to sustain it, and maybe part of that is instinct, something that's built into its DNA or whatever. But it still does know a language to a degree, even if it can't talk, even if it can't think in that language.
And even a wild animal can learn to associate a sound, like, okay, this rustling or the cry of this bird means it's going to eat it. Yeah. I was just trying to not. I didn't want to insinuate to the audience that because we say something is only real because we give it value doesn't mean it's invalid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as we're on the same page. All right. So, grammar. Can you? I kind of skipped past a bunch really quick. Can you think of any situation where logic isn't used? Or any? even, I mean, you get into like what is thinking. You know, I mean, logic is used by animals. It's used by humans. It's used by, you can say, machine logic. You know, but machine logic is electronic, which is just mechanical on a very, very small scale.
Machine logic is very, very black and white. We use ones and zeros down to the very, very basic things, and from there we have what we see on our computer screens today.
Yeah.
But you still, if you break everything down, it's just really ones and zeros moving through everything. That's how data is stored. That's how data is transferred. That's how data is read. Quantum computing is a different subject altogether, but we haven't moved too far into that field yet.
Okay, well, I'm saying logic, machine logic is just an extension of human logic. I think, if that makes sense. You know, it's I mean,
it is, but it is super hard logic, like very much true and false, and human logic. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of room to be completely black and white. There's it seems like there's always a gray area. Regarding just about any subject.
I would countersignal that most of the gray areas that we interpret in logic are externalities. You know, they can probably be parsed away. I'm not trying to be ultra. Oh, you know, I'm super logical. You know, because I am a moral relativist. You know, and kind of thing. You know, I know there's some situations where. I mean, if something, say a law, if a law is explained out well enough, you know, then there's no room for any misinterpretation.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. If it's something really, really simple and put down to paper and agreed upon, saying, okay, this is the law, you know, if this happens, then the punishment is this. I think a lot of the gray areas in sociology anyway, you know, could be said, okay, you know, just externalities. It's like, okay, this is the law, you know, but he's a good kid. He probably won't do that again, kind of thing. Well, that's not logical. That's not what we have down in the law, kind of thing.
No, I can't really think of when we don't use logic, but maybe people don't realize that they are using logic to a degree, and what factors go into their decisions and their thinking and
well, we discussed
like
maybe the antithesis. Oh god, that was tough. Maybe the antithesis of logic could be
antithesis,
superstition or faith.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a gray patchy area, you know, because we discussed, you know, there are plenty of people who were you know, very faithful, you know, who still were, you know, logical people on the at face value.
Yeah, and it seems like faith is to a degree based in logic as well. Like you have to believe this and that and stuff because your faith tells you to. But a lot of that faith is based in logic, or maybe based in just a lack of understanding of something. You know, the old Greek gods believed that there was someone who pulled the sun across the sky in a big old chariot. We could never see the chariot. We had no reason for believing that. But that was just, you know, oh, maybe this is it. And until we could prove otherwise, that's the truth. It was faith. It was part of the religion.
That's a departure of how we think of things now. Because when we encounter a problem now, you know, we don't automatically say, okay, the most likely or the agreed upon thing is, I mean, we shouldn't. I know we still do, you know, but okay, we don't know, I don't know, point to something, you know, we don't know what, you know, X deep space thing, how it works, or X deep ocean thing, how it works, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, problem, or something like that, you know, we don't know how, we haven't completely mapped the human genome, or we haven't, you know, mastered quantum mechanics, things like that, and there's no grand unifying theory. We don't automatically say, okay, you know, this is it, you know, until someone comes up with a better idea, you know, or the correct one, or can prove otherwise, this is it. We kind of say, okay, we don't know yet.
Yeah. But something that really interests me about science and the scientific method and the scientific community is, and this is something we can definitely, I think, spend an entire podcast episode on, is It seems like you can't prove something right. You cannot prove something right. You don't know for a fact that's how something works. You can say behavior and say, okay, if I do this, this is most likely what's going to happen. But you can't say without, you know, 100% doubt that this is the right thing, this is correct. You can only prove something false. And it's a really interesting aspect of science to me.
I see what you're saying. Even things that are largely agreed upon, this is still the theory.
Yeah, something that might be axiomatic in our society can still be proven wrong at some point.
Well, I mean, I don't think that kind of thinking is problematic. I don't know. Certainty is not something that I think certainty is something that people have grown to live without.
Yeah.
If it doesn't apply to their lives day to day, they're like, okay, certainty is not necessary, to them. I mean, I don't know anybody that stays up at night, worrying about if, X, theory of relativity is going to be disproven. It's only a theory. It might not be it. Well, I'm sure there's someone who does, but.
Yeah, but that's again, that's just a subject for something else.
Yeah. Well, we can get back to.
All right, so I can't think of when grammar isn't used in any day-to-day situation. Can't think of when logic isn't used in any day-to-day situation. I get up and I go to work in the morning because if I don't get paid, and I can't feed my family. I can't put a roof over their heads, stuff like that. That is logic, even if I'm not thinking about it logically. I just know, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There is a logic there. I don't think of it as logic. That just seems like that's what's going to happen. And then rhetoric, I guess that one's kind of hit or miss. We don't need to persuade people too often of things.
Maybe not. It's not necessary day to day, I suppose.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who get up, and whether it's a work day or it's not a work day, they don't interact with anybody. Maybe that wasn't always true. Well, I suppose the farmers and whatnot. Yeah, no, I can't think of. Well, because all right, rhetoric doesn't have to refer to something logical. You can just be like, "Hey, I'm using rhetoric here. I'm going to get you to believe me, or I'm going to get you to think what I'm thinking, or convince you to do this thing, but it might not necessarily be based in logic."
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of getting away from what we're talking about, but like in the beginning, the biggest guy, the biggest kid in the cave, with the biggest rock, he's like, okay, you guys listen to me, because I have rock, you don't need to wonder why, I can show you why. Person steps out, is going to get rocked in the head.
Yeah. He can hit harder, but therefore he is more correct.
Yeah. Rhetoric. We're kind of getting back into the data thing. You can't really convince someone. I think anyway. It's hard to meaningfully use rhetoric if you don't believe what you're saying.
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
Well, maybe a case can be said if you believe. I guess the result of what you're trying to argue. You could.
It's a little bit meta there. Okay,
Yeah. So like a salesman, what we mentioned earlier. Salesperson. Why are they in the sales position? Well, they want more money from a commission. Even if they don't necessarily believe in a product, they can convince that other person that they believe in the product, and that they should believe in the product too, and that they should believe in this product so much that they should buy it. And the people who actually do believe in that product, humans are great lie detectors, even if we're not consciously aware of it. So if a person does actually believe in a product and is trying to sell it to someone else, I think they'll have an easier time with sales.
Yeah,
which is exactly getting to your point. But I think you can definitely argue something that you don't necessarily believe in, if the end result is something that you believe in or want or something like that.
I can see that, maybe a politician who says, hey, we need to vote for me, because I'll do what makes people happy, and then instead, when he gets to the office, he carries out things that will either make him happy or things that might not make the people happy, but will make them prosperous or are necessary that they don't really like. Like no one likes a tax hike, but that's how you get money for. It's kind of like that.
All right, so we've talked about a lot today. I think we should wrap this up pretty soon.
All right, wrap it up.
We are coming on an hour and 20 minutes, almost an hour and a half of talking. So, traditionally, this was implemented as part of a classic education system in what would be the equivalent of grade school back in the Middle Ages. The students would learn grammar, they would learn rhymes, they would learn words and their meanings and stuff like that. What was equivalent of middle school out here, or I guess secondary school? No, middle school would be the right term, right? They would learn logic, so they would learn the logic behind things. As part of the grammar learning, you might learn logic, you might learn if this then that, but you might not know why. You might not be able to present an argument for it. And then in high school, or the equivalent of high school, I doubt we had many medieval high schools, you would learn rhetoric. You would learn how to present an argument and how to persuade someone of that argument. Now, how does it connect to you? How can it help someone in today's world? I think the biggest way is if you're learning a new subject. If you're learning, say, violin or, music. We're coming back to music. We can... You would separate this out into 3 different things. You can learn the grammar behind music or the grammar behind the violin itself. If I hold a string here, it makes a different note. And what is this note called? You can learn the logic behind these things. I am holding the string, so therefore it's making this note. And I guess rhetoric doesn't really apply so much, except, are you the case that you're a good musician once you've practiced this enough?
Yeah. Buy my records.
Yeah. You're arguing at something. People believe in your music.
Arguing at something. Let me argue at you a minute. Get over here. I wanna shout words at your earbox.
Let me rectify your way of thinking for you.
Yeah. Distance is frugal. I got nothing.
All right. So, if you, this is for our first podcast, our inaugural podcast, I guess. We wanted to do this almost a month ago, but we are very lazy. So, if you enjoy this, go ahead and leave a review of some sort on wherever you're listening to this to. This helps us out a lot. And we thank you so much for listening to our first podcast. I don't know about you, but my throat is very tired.
Yeah, same. I'm going to stretch it out and relax it. Smoke a half a pack of Marlboros. And
go gargle some glass.
Right. It's rain. Yeah, gargle some glass. All right. Good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Invocation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and let us know. You can find a comment section usually down below, depending on where we uploaded it, or you can leave a review for us. You can follow us on one of our social media accounts. We have social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace. You know where to find us. Thank you.